In the journey towards progress, every step counts, and today we take a giant leap by amplifying the voices that have been whispered for too long. The voices of women, the architects of change. In the heart of our community, we bring together the architects, the leaders, the visionaries, the trailblazers. They don't just lead, they inspire. They don't just talk, they ignite conversations that transform. This is more than a gathering, it's a movement where women lift each other higher, where ideas aren't just heard, but celebrated. Because in our stories, there is power. In our experiences, there's resilience. In our conversations, there's revolution. And in our unity, there's a force that moves mountains. Join us as we redefine leadership, reshape the narrative, and illuminate the path for every woman stepping into greatness. Together we rise, together we lead. Welcome to a world where women's voices don't just echo, they resonate. Welcome to Power to Our Women.
Hello everyone, welcome to Power to Our Women. My name is Mercy Wahogo and I'll be your host for today. Our guest today is Gloria Feldt, who is an acclaimed expert on women, power and leadership, with frontline leadership experience, a best-selling author, and an in-demand keynote speaker. She's co-founder and president of Take the Lead, whose mission reflects her life's passion to prepare, develop, inspire, and propel women to take their fair and equal leadership positions across all sectors by 2025 by providing breakthrough training, mentoring and coaching, role model, and thought leadership. She's the best-selling author of 4 books, the latest being No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power. She was formerly president and CEO of the world's largest reproductive health and advocacy organization, Planned Parenthood Federation of America. She was also named by Vanity Fair as one of America's top 200 women leaders, legends, and trailblazers, and by Glamour magazine as Women of the Year, and Forbes 40 over 40. On the side, she's an awesome chili maker. Welcome, Gloria.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I can't tell you how much I loved your opening video. It is beautiful. And also the title of this series, Power to Our Women, because as you know, Power to is one of our favorite things that we talk about at Take the Lead. So we're so aligned and I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for honoring our invite. And so tell us, who is Gloria in your own words?
Who's Gloria?
Yes.
Well, it's a long story, so I don't want to take up the entire time together telling it to you. But Gloria started out, she grew up in small towns in the state of Texas in the U.S., little rural towns, and was a teen mom, had 3 kids by the time I was 20. And then I started to college. I just sort of woke up all of a sudden. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 3 children. What if I had to support them on my own? I have no employable skills. And so I started to college, and it took me 12 years to finish. But in the process of doing that, I had the opportunity to get involved in community service work. And that was when I became really especially involved in the civil rights movement and in the women's movement, and realized that my passion is to ensure that all women of all diversities and every intersectionality has the opportunity to thrive and to have a fair and equal share of everything in the world. And that's not the world that was not the world I grew up in. So that was when I began to work for women's equality. And I taught kindergarten. I taught kindergarten in a program called Head Start. Planned on being a high school social studies teacher, did a paper on a small new Planned Parenthood affiliate in my small town. And before I knew it, I had been offered the position of executive director. And I thought, I don't know anything about this. I've never managed anything before. I've never run an organization. I know nothing about healthcare administration, but it sounds kind of interesting. So I said yes. And that's one of the things I love to talk to young women about, which is just say yes. Just say yes to opportunities that are in front of you. You never know where they may take you. And if it doesn't work out, you can do something else. So that led me to a 30-year career with Planned Parenthood, ending, as you mentioned in my bio, as the national president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, where I had the opportunity also to travel around the world to see family planning programs everywhere, including in Kenya and Uganda and many other places in the world. And so that was wonderful. But I, at 30 years, I thought, I'd been wanting to write books since I was 5 years old, and carried a little notebook around with me. And, I fancied myself a writer then. And, life intervenes sometimes. You may plan for yourself, but you don't, things happen and it doesn't work out exactly like you thought. So I thought that I would write books, and that's what I would do with the rest of my life. One of the books that I wrote, which you mentioned, No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, is a study of why we haven't reached parity, even though we have been opening doors and changing laws. And we've seen so many incredible women doing amazing things. And yet, when it comes to the top leadership, we are so far from equality. And until you have equality in the leadership, you don't have equality in power, and you probably don't have equality in pay either. So we know that there are pay disparities and disparities in the power that women have all over. It's true everywhere in the world. So I wrote this book, and people started asking me to teach workshops using it.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon I saw that by helping women shift their thinking from the oppressive idea of power over, which you showed in the opening video,
Yes.
shifting the idea from power over to the generative and creative idea of power to, it changed everything for them. And then they could open their minds and see themselves doing more amazing things, more, and particularly taking more leadership roles and not being afraid to. So I just pretty soon was like, okay, I think, if I wanted to do workshops, that's okay. But if we really wanted to make change in the world, we had to have an organization. And
Yes.
so Take the Lead was born 10 years ago. We're very excited. This is our 10th anniversary. And we have a 10th anniversary event coming up, our Power 2 concert and conference in Washington, D.C., August 25th and 26th. So the story of Gloria is, eventually I met the love of my life, and he had 3 children. I have 3 children. So now, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but we have a blended family of the 6 children, several spouses of those children, and 16 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So that's the story of Gloria.
That's an impressive and beautiful story. And you've talked about your work experience. So I have a question for you. The first question: you've been a prominent figure in the field of women's leadership and empowerment. Why did you choose this path and not another area of advocacy or social change?
It's where my heart is. And I think you have to follow what your heart is, and that, what is your purpose? You find what your purpose is, and nothing else matters unless if you're not working on what your purpose is, you may not feel this sense of integrity that I feel when I do this work. I feel passionate all the time. It's never work. It's like, it's enjoyment to do this work, to see women have these transformational moments and all of a sudden think, oh, you know what? I never thought I could do that. I never thought I could become the CEO. I never thought I could start a business. I never thought I could be the dean of the law school. I mean, I get emails from women who were in our courses 5 or 10 years ago who are telling me that because of what they learned, they were able to know they could accomplish so much more than they ever thought they could. And they're so happy about it. And that keeps me going, keeps me very happy. I'm optimistic all the time because I see the amazing change.
Yeah, that's true. You get excited by fulfilling your purpose and actually doing what you love. So, actually, following up on that, tell us about what the lead entails. What's your role as the co-founder, and how do you manage the organization's mission and programs? And what experiences have influenced your path to leadership?
Oh my goodness. Well, I had to learn about leadership on the job.
Okay.
I literally, because I mean, I did finish my bachelor's degree, but it's in sociology and speech communication. So I did not learn about leadership or managing a large organization. I did not learn that in school. I had to go find places where I could learn, and I could learn from other people who had been successful. And to me, that's the best education, is to be what you is to own up to what you don't know, and then go hang out with the people who do know and can help you understand all of it, and you can learn from them. And then know that sometimes you use your best judgment and you make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, own it, learn from it, and keep going forward. So it sort of doesn't matter where you start. Just start. Just start. And I think that's the main thing that I learned. And for Take the Lead, when we started 10 years ago, we did things differently from most organizations, even most nonprofit organizations. We do not have an office. We have never had a physical office ever. We started doing online courses before they were cool, before COVID made everybody learn how to enjoy and own and learn from the digital world, because we wanted to make our work accessible to everyone. And we started it as a nonprofit organization for that same reason, because I know we've had people who've gone through our program who said, my company sent me to Harvard and they paid $30,000 for a program that was not as helpful as what I learned from you. And so that makes me happy too, because we want to make sure that what we can provide to women is accessible to all women far and wide. There's so many smart women out there. We want to help all women find their purpose, find their best, what are your sources of power? What are your points of power? What are the relationships that you have that can help you reach your highest and best intentions? And so that's what Take the Lead does. We are partly funded philanthropically, and then we also are able to charge for some of our work and some of our courses. So we sort of bridge all different ways. We just want to get it out to the whole world.
Okay, all right. So you've talked about power too. What inspired you to create and advocate for the concept of power to instead of power over? And how has it influenced the narrative around women's leadership and your work?
Well, when I started doing the research for my book, No Excuses, I found that most of the studies concluded that women had less ambition than men. And I know, I see your face, you see? And I had the same reaction. I'm like, that can't be it. It has to be something else. And so as I began to study, and I did focus groups, and I talked to women all over the country. And what I realized is, because we all grow up in the same culture, we women are acculturated. It's all culturally learned. It's not hardwired.
Yeah.
But we have borne the brunt of the most negative aspects of power. And so often women would say, I don't like the idea of power. It's bad.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, but you can't get anything done if you won't use your power. And I realized that that's why we had to have that shift in the power paradigm in our own minds, that our minds are filled with negative aspects of power, which do exist. And look, what is the narrative of history that men have written? It's been about
Yeah.
war. It's been
Yeah.
about fighting. It's been
Yeah.
about resources are scarce.
Yeah.
Well, women are smart enough not to want that kind of power. So we have to reinvent a different kind of power for ourselves. And that is the power to make life better for our children, our families, ourselves, our world, our communities. And making that conceptual shift from power over to power to, it just like wipes out all of that trash in our own minds that has made us fearful of power or made us think that power is a bad thing. And then once you can embrace your power, you can actually have confidence in it, and you can have joy in using it to do good things in the world.
Yeah, that's true. So about the take the lead, what strategies does take the lead plan to implement to further increase the number of women in leadership roles across different sectors? And how do the strategies address the unique challenges that women face in leadership in the workplace?
Oh, thank you for that question. So the reason we say across all sectors is because what we found is that the curriculum that I've developed works regardless of the sector. You can learn the nuts and bolts of your profession anywhere. You can learn about the nuts and bolts of leadership anywhere. I mean, we don't teach women how to plan and budget, and you need to know those things. HR, all these things you have to know to run an organization or to be a leader. So that's readily available. So we feel like we don't need to do that. So we focus on the mindset issues that face women and the implicit bias that women face when we go out to be leaders in the world. We are literally treated differently as women than men are. And so we have to understand that implicit bias and where it comes from, and not let it get into our heads. That's the main thing, is don't let the negativity get into our own heads. You know what I found out? I found out that women, in studies that were done, women would work 20% longer than men before they thought they had earned their money, because they had less confidence in themselves and less belief that what they were doing was valuable. What's the pay gap? I don't know exactly what it is in other countries, but in the US, the pay gap is 20%. Well, there you go. As my daddy used to say, she who asks gets. If you don't see yourself as worthy,
Yeah.
and you don't ask, you're going to have a pay gap, because nobody's going to pay you more than they want to pay you. You have to ask for it, right? So
Yes.
developing that sense of confidence and the ability to identify your own highest and best intentions means that you have to clear out all the negative stuff in your brain and replace it with a positive idea of the power to. And by the way, I don't ever say that we empower women, because that's another thing I found. Women are earning the majority of college degrees, and that is true globally. The business case is very clear that companies with more women in their leadership are more profitable. All of these things, we have the power of the purse. We make the purchasing decisions for 85% of the goods and services that fuel the economy. So think about that. We actually have power if we know it, if we identify it, and if we are willing to own it and claim it and use it. So I don't really say that we empower women. I always say we can help you know the power you have.
Yes, since everyone is born with the power. So actually, some of our viewers have questions and from our chat box. So one
Good.
of our questions is from Cynthia, and it's, how did you find your power and what's the story behind that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have to. It's true confession time. True confession time, because even though I had been fortunate to rise in my work and to have positions that had titles like CEO, The truth is, I was mostly using my power on behalf of other people. I wasn't ever thinking about using it in my own way for my own self. And after I started writing my books, one of the books that I wrote was I co-authored a book with the actress Kathleen Turner about her life, and we have a wonderful relationship. We were equal partners in this project. She always credits me. Our contract with the publisher was supposed to be equal, but when it came time to publicize the book, she was the bigger celebrity. And so we went to mind you, I'm already in my 60s when this is going on. So I didn't learn this early in my life. We go to the publishers for a publicity meeting. They turn their back to me and only talk to her because they were only interested in publicizing her. And I realized in that moment that that was how I had lived my life. I had been fortunate to work in a field that I cared about and to do things that were very helpful for women in general. And I wouldn't trade a minute of that. I'm very proud of the work that I've done. But what I realized was that I had spent my life speaking for other people, and I had never spoken my own truth, told my own story, done my own, really created something that was fully my own. And in one sense, I'm continuing that pattern, having started Take the Lead instead of doing this just as an individual. But with Take the Lead, I have taken care to continue having my own personal brand. So while we have the organization, and I hope it goes on long after me, I am also taking care to make sure that I also have a personal brand out there and people know me for me. That was a hard lesson. It was a terribly hard lesson. But, sometimes that's how you learn a lesson. It's hard, but you have to just deal with it. That was my moment.
Okay. All right. So talking about challenges, what are some of the challenges that Take the Lead have encountered and maybe anticipate in its efforts to ensure that gender parity in leadership? And how does it plan to address these challenges in the workspace and in all spaces?
Well, needless to say, the pandemic was a big challenge. And we had just reached the point where our budget had surpassed $1 million a year. We had reached a point where we were getting funding from major foundations and getting really recognized. And we have our most powerful and impactful program is called 50 Women Can Change the World and we do that by sector. So, for example, we've done 50 Women Can Change the World in nonprofits, 50 Women Can Change the World in media and entertainment, in journalism, in healthcare, in law. We just did one for entrepreneurs. So we had an evaluation that proved that this technique that we have accelerates women in leadership. And then the pandemic forced us to change a lot of things. And also funding dried up. The funding for women's leadership literally went away in a nanosecond because it all went for COVID relief or racial justice issues. And it was really hard to explain that, sexism, racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, all of these things are joined at the head. And you can't silo them. You can't separate them. They all need to go forward together. But it was very hard to deliver that message. I think that message is now becoming more readily acknowledged. But for a couple of years, it was very hard. We lost a lot of our funding, and then we had to completely retool all of our programs because while we knew how to do online programming, we also had created this wonderful program where people were in person part of the time before they went virtual so that they got to know each other more robustly. And that was part of the secret sauce, was getting people being in the same room. So I would say that was a big setback for us, and that from which we have just now recovered and we're back on track. And I think in general, We saw during the pandemic that women suffered more because they were in more of the low paying jobs. They lost their jobs more. Uh, they had to be at home taking care of their families instead of going to work because they were schooling their children at home. They were, I mean, women had many challenges that they hadn't had before the pandemic. So all of those things we have had to contend with, and they're and yet I truly believe that these massive disruptions are the best time to make big systemic change. So we're coming out of the pandemic with companies knowing they need to have more flexibility for families. They've invested in women, so they need female talent. They can't just say, oh, well, all you ladies go home and, cook and clean and whatever. So I see this as an extremely fortuitous moment now, if we see it, if we take it. And that's one of the power tools that I teach is carpe the chaos. It's like when there's a moment of chaos, don't let it set you back. Take that energy and figure out how to propel yourself forward with it. So I'm feeling like this is a great moment. And I think just even the fact that, look, here we are talking across time zones and continents, and we have the same mission for women all over the world. This is so exciting. I love this.
Right. Yes, it's just a beautiful moment to be alive. This new century has brought us very amazing things. And so, our audience, you can just ask questions or comments in the chat. And we actually have another question, and from Cynthia. So, how did you balance leadership as a woman and getting a family, especially being in the private sector?
Mhm.
Almost feels like the world leaves you behind trying to manage your career and your family life. How did you navigate that?
Well, I think my children would probably tell you that my work was always central to my life, and they I again, I'm going to give you a true confession, because I realized I would have been a much better parent and known how to strike that balance if I hadn't been so young. And I think that's why it's really good to to raise girls up to find themselves first before they start having a family, and then they have more of the emotional intelligence to be able to be really good parents. So honestly, there was no such thing as work-life balance when I got started. But what I've found over time is that there are a few things that I must do for myself in order to have the right energy and the ability to both be a good parent and to be successful in my career. And that is, I have to exercise. I need physical exercise. I will give up sleep or almost anything else in order to have time in the morning to exercise for about an hour. And that has just become an integral part of my life. And you'd almost have to ask my children what they thought about whether I ever learned how to balance it all. Because I feel like for everybody, the truth is that every day is a series of choices. And every day we make a series of choices about how we're going to spend our time. I want to make a choice to take one of my daughters. She's been working really hard. She's had a lot of stress in her life. I want to take her for a week at a spa. And what that means is that we both have to carve out time in our busy lives to do that. And sometimes that's hard. You just put it off. You put off doing the things for yourself. But you know what they say about, if something happens in the airplane, you put your oxygen mask on yourself first before you start trying to help other people. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take good care of everybody else. So So I don't think I have a really good answer for people. I probably work too hard. I probably have always worked too hard. But if it gives you joy, your children know that. And your children are also, I think it's good for children to be part of their parents' professional work. I think it's good for them to see what their parents are doing, and especially their moms. So it helps them to grow up with more of a belief in gender equality.
Yeah, that's very honest. Actually, saying how you navigated all that. So, to the next question. So, what's looking back at your extensive career? What are some of the biggest changes you've witnessed in the landscape of women's leadership?
So the good news is that now there are so many women who are in professions that can, where they can be an example for other women. When women were first starting into professional careers, or when we first start in whatever, if we're in a culture where there aren't many women in leadership positions, who do you turn to for mentorship? Who do you turn to for guidance? It's hard to find other women to show you the way. So it's important to have mentors that are both male and female, and to find the male partners who also share your belief in equality between the genders. And generally speaking, men who have daughters are more inclined to want to help you out because they want their daughters to have an equal opportunity, even if in the grand scheme of things they don't see themselves as being particularly leaders in gender equality. They want their daughters to have equal opportunities, so they're more inclined to be willing to mentor. And then also we have to understand the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And a mentor is someone who you can bounce ideas off of, who will give you advice and maybe be supportive to you in various ways. But a sponsor is somebody who even talks about you when you're not in the room, who is maybe in a position of power and will tell other people when you're not in the room that about your abilities and what they've observed about your skills and your abilities. And that's really important, to have sponsors as well as mentors. And that requires relationship building. I believe, thank you, Martha, for saying these great insights. I believe the world turns on human connections. Everything that happens to us in life is almost entirely because of human connections. The people we know, the people who we love, the people who see in us sometimes more than we see in ourselves. And we need to learn to nurture those relationships proactively and intentionally. And so when you're thinking about who your mentors and sponsors might be, think about, who should you be sure you have coffee with every once in a while? Who should you be sure knows that you did this successful project? Who should you don't have to wait until your formal evaluation time. Make sure people know. Men never shy away from tooting their own horns. This is one of the big differences between male leaders and female leaders. It's like men will take credit for everything, even if they didn't deserve it. And women will say, oh, it was teamwork. Well, it probably was teamwork, but that doesn't mean that you can't toot your own horn a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Vivian. I agree. Thank you very much. Toot your own horn. Use the power of your voice. Tell your story. Yes, make sure people know. Exactly.
Okay, so we also have another question from the audience. Can you speak a bit about the 9 leader power tools that you developed?
Yes, the 9 leadership power tools are, there are 3 different buckets that they fall into. And truthfully, if you have these 9 leadership power tools, they will answer most of the questions and give you strategies for almost everything you do in leadership and in life. And they're somewhat interchangeable, but it starts with, so the first bucket is what I call the self-definitional power tools. These are the tools about who are you? What are your strengths that you bring? What are your highest intentions? What is your history? And what are the resources that you have that you can bring to bear? So that's know your history, define your own terms, and use what you've got. Those are the first 3 self-definitional tools. The second bucket is what I call the counterintuitive power tools, because often these are things that mama may have told you not to do. And but it turns out that they can actually help you. Embrace controversy, carpe the chaos, and wear the shirt. So by that, I mean, know what your convictions are. We talked about that. And don't be afraid to share that with people, because I find that people follow people who have a point of view. People follow people who know what their values are and share them. And because that builds trust. And trust is really at the heart of successful leadership. But then also, you've probably been told to back away from controversy, right? Or chaos. Well, the truth is, those things are just pure, they're just energy. They're energy that you can tap. And for example, when an issue is controversial, it means people are paying attention to it. So that gives you a platform to talk about why you have a certain belief or why you think a certain course of action is best for your organization to take. Like if you're doing strategic planning for your organization, if you don't argue a little bit about which path is the best one, you're not going to come up with the best path. You need to be willing to put those issues out on the table and really work them out and not be afraid of controversy, not be afraid if there's some conflict. That's how you clarify your beliefs. That's how you clarify your intentions and how you clarify your values and usually find a solution that was better than either of the ones that you may have started with, yours and the other folks who had a different idea. So that's the counterintuitive power tools. The third bucket then is the change leadership tools. These are the really important tools that the greatest of leaders know and understand. And it starts with having your own vision, and it starts with what I call employ every medium. That's the tool. Understand that you are the medium and you are the message. So, especially with technology today, we can all be the media. We can all get our thought leadership out there. And that's how you define the terms. That's how you shape the debate, is by putting your ideas out. If you have a blog, if you do it on social media posts, however you wish to do it, we all have the ability now to employ every medium that's available to us. So the second one is create a movement. And that's the 8th power tool, which is the second one of the change leadership tools. It's create a movement. How do you create a movement? I'm not talking about walking out with a picket sign. Oh, that's okay. I've done that too. I've led a big march before. That's a lot of fun. But you can create a little mini movement around yourself. That requires you to find your sisters and your brothers. Who has the same ideas about things that you do? Who shares your concerns? Find those people. Make common cause with them. Then you have to have the courage to share those ideas with each other and perhaps with the people in charge who can actually make the change if it's not you. And then you have to have a plan and a strategy. So that's how you really create a movement that makes a difference. I mean, what you are doing with Power to Our Women, you are creating a movement. You said that yourself. You're creating a movement. And that you're not out screaming and yelling with a picket sign. You are doing it through your media. You're doing it through educating women. You're doing it through getting people together, and I'm sure many other ways that I don't even know about. So congratulations on all of that. You are creating movement. The final power tool is power tool 9, and this is a good one to end on. Tell your story. Your story is your power. Your story is your truth. Nobody has your story. That is unique to you. People learn from stories. People, our minds are wired to learn not from facts and figures, but from stories. And the person who learns to tell their story effectively is going to go a very long way in this world. So those are the 9 leadership power tools.
Thank you for summarizing it in the best way possible. So, as to our second last question, looking back on your remarkable journey, what legacy do you hope to leave behind through Take the Lead?
I will not rest until I really see women having equality in power, pay, and leadership positions. And that's when I'll know, okay, I can rest. I think that may not happen while I'm around, but I think it will keep me going for a very long time and continue giving me this sense of purpose. And I feel so fortunate to be able to, to have been able to make my life's passions into my life's work. And when you are able to do that, you are a lucky human being.
Yeah, that's luck. And as we close this fireside chat, tell us about the upcoming event and what you aim to achieve from this event as your parting shot.
So in addition to our online courses, which we will be relaunching our 9 Leadership Power Tools course in September, and I'm redoing everything, bringing it really up to date, making it even more fabulous than it was. And then we'll do a version of it for entrepreneurs, and we also do in-person workshops, and we do corporate training. But we know that people need to get together sometimes. So we do one big conference a year, and we call it the Power Up Conference. And we have started doing it on a special day in the US, which is Women's Equality Day. And that date was really created in 1972 to mark the anniversary of when the women's right to vote was put into the US Constitution. But guess what? We still don't have the Equal Rights Amendment. So I call it Women's Inequality Day until we get the Equal Rights Amendment and until women have full equality in leadership. And so we have the Power Up Conference. This year it's in Washington, D.C., and also virtually, so people can get it virtually as well. And you can just go to our website, taketheleadwomen.com, and the conference website is taketheleadwomen.com/the Power Up Conference. And you can find out all about it. We have Wonder Woman actress Linda Carter is going to be at our concert. And we have 3 incredible performing groups of concert pianist Marina Arsenievich. We have Betty, an indie pop group I love, they're fantastic. And we have Sweet Honey in the Rock, which is an iconic it's both a movement and an a cappella group that is much beloved. So those are the performers for the concert at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. on Sunday, August 25th, and then Monday, Women's Equality Day, August 26th. The Power Up Conference will be held, and we have an action-packed day where our theme is Together We Lead. So we have Together We Lead for health, wealth, careers, thought leadership, branding, self-branding, the whole, the things that are really on women's minds. Because we want people to leave with not only inspiration, but also information, and most importantly, having made commitments for how they're going to use it to achieve true equality for women. So sign up, join us, whether you can do it in person or virtually. We want to see you. Yes, thank you very much for putting the link up. I appreciate that. And happy to answer questions about it. And right now we have some early bird kinds of discounts going on. And actually, I will send you all a special additional discount code so that you can share it around and make it even more accessible to people.
Okay. Thank you so much for for honoring our invite. It's been wonderful. Thank you for being an inspiration to everyone. And thank you so much for honoring us. And we're so grateful. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.